right. Please do remain on mute during the duration of the program until the end when we take questions. And one second, sorry. And then, yeah, so hi, my name is Jessica Sundstrom. Welcome to the Kalamazoo Institute of Art's ArtBreak from Home. Soon, these will end soon. We will be back in the building. Sorry, Steve, I don't know why I have an echo. I'm not hearing one. So I just some notes ahead of time. I'll stop talking soon anyway, so hopefully there won't be an echo if it's coming from me. Just some notes. 97-cent entry for the month of July. So if you are not a member of the KIA and you would like to come and see the West Michigan Area Show or the other exhibitions on display, if you book your ticket ahead of time on the KIA's brand new website, you can get 97-cent entry, and that is in celebration of the KIA's 97th birthday. And our next art break after this is July 27th. Amber Utsema is the educator at the Meyer Gardens, and she will be speaking on the artist Beverly Pepper, because Meyer Gardens was the recipient of Beverly Pepper's personal archives. And we have got Beverly Pepper's Torre nel Piano Vuoto duo on display in our Unveiling American Genius exhibition. So we're so thrilled today to be joined by some West Michigan Area Show artists. We're always so excited to get to highlight some wonderful regional artists in this juried exhibition. Today we are being joined by Tatsuki Taz Hakayama, Lynette Robinson, and Cindy Krill. And they will be speaking about their work. You've got the chance to come and see it on display if you haven't already. The West Michigan Area Show closes on September 12th. And please, while you are visiting, remember that you can have a say in the People's Choice Award. So there's a QR code that you can scan at the KIA that will pull up the online entry form, and you can select the work that you would like to be selected as the West Michigan Area Show People's Choice Award. That's really enough for me. I am going to introduce Taz Hakayama and allow him to start our excellent conversation today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So I'm going to actually start sharing my screen, and I will just start talking. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a Japanese artist. I was born in Japan. I did live in a small island country in the South Pacific for 4 years prior to moving to United States. But I have been in Michigan since 2001, which feels like it was fairly recent, but now I realize that's 20 years ago. Just a little bit about my background. I got my bachelor's degree in art from Central Michigan University, and then I received my Master of Fine Arts in Painting from Kendall College of Art and Design in Grand Rapids. I currently teach at Kendall College of Art and Design as an adjunct faculty, as well as for Grand Rapids Community College. So hopefully over the summertime, I'm not losing my, lecture giving, process here. So one of the pieces that you will see at the West Michigan Area Show that's mine is this one here. Generally, I enjoy working with figurative paintings, so I do like to use people in the work. I also do work fairly representational, so kind of keeping it fairly realistic in a way. For this piece, I did choose to keep the background a little more abstracted because it is referencing the fable Tortoise and the Hare. This is from my Human Condition series, which is my current series, and it kind of reflects on different, human aspects of things like emotionality, conflict, growth, aspirations, all those things that we, as human beings always go through at some point in our lives. And the paintings from this series is kind of meant to be more allegorical, where, it's a narrative, but it's also, there's things that I'm hoping that the viewer kind of questions, like, what is the additional meaning behind these works? So even though it's usually a singular isolated figure in an environment, I'm really trying to, figure out how can I make it so that when people look at it, they see a story and they see some kind of meaning within the story that's being painted there. This is another one that's at the West Michigan Area Show. Again, this is from the same series here. You can see, again, isolated figure in some kind of environment, interacting with the environment. This is also another one from the series. Some of you might have seen this. This was also in the West Michigan Area Show last year. So this is, this body of work has been going on for the past 2-3 years now, because I do work with oil, and oil painting can take a long time to complete and completely cure and dry. So I'm just trying to show you a little bit of like what some of my paintings that I'm currently working on from the series. This is one of the most recently finished one from this series here. And again, you can probably see some of that, the ambiguity in the narrative in one way or another, where we don't know exactly what the story is. We know there's something there, but I'm really trying to make it so that the ambiguity creates a little bit of interest in the viewer. So you question what's going to happen next. What does it really mean? Stylistically, I'm strongly influenced by magical realist painters, artists like George Tucker and Peter Bloom. If you're not familiar with these artists, I do recommend that if you're interested in art, try looking them up. They are artists, I believe, from the 1960s, in that era. But what they did is they tried to take a mundane, like, scenery or mundane situation, but with a very a little bit of strangeness to their images. Not like all the way out there kind of crazy things, but just it's a very normal looking scene. But when you look carefully, there's something that's very off about it. And I'm very strongly influenced by their approaches, and I'm hoping that you can kind of see that happening in my work as well, where the figure and the environment might seem at first glance somewhat straightforward, yet when you look at it a little bit more closely, you kind of wonder, well, that doesn't seem like a realistic, situation and environment there. And since, this is a, chance for me to talk about my work, I also thought I'd kind of show a little bit of the process, because I do feel like when you go to different, art museums and galleries, you usually only see the finished product. And it may be because I'm an artist, but I always do enjoy seeing how other people work. And I thought I'd show a little bit of that as well here. So specifically for this series of work, I either come up with, think of random object that I think can create an interesting story or an interesting pose. It's usually one of those two that I start with, whether it's an object or a pose. And with this one, I actually started out with the metronome as an object that I thought could be used in a, to kind of invoke that narrative there. And you can see the far left is my 20-second super rough thumbnail sketch. Sometimes I feel like, showing these make me feel like I'm not as good of an artist, because they look really like doodles that's just random shapes. But, from there, I usually think of what kind of pose, what kind of environment would react to the object well, and the middle sketch is what I get. And then the far right image is actually the early phases of my painting. This is called the underpainting for those who don't work, with oil. It's essentially just one color sketch that I do on the canvas, so that as I start adding more colors, I have something to reference. So this is something that you can actually see in the background of me right now. That should hopefully give you a general size as well of the work that I make. I do try to keep it somewhat on a larger side, so that when you look at it in person, the figures seem a little bit more relatable, because they are somewhat close to the life size. I do find that when I work figurative, I like to keep it that way, so that we're not looking as much as like a small image, but more so the paintings seem more like reflective of how we exist in our world. And in the West Michigan Area Show, you will also find another one that's completely different from my other two pieces that's in there, and that's this one here. Last year during quarantine, I decided to just switch things up because, well, the whole world's kind of upside down. Why not, do that with my practice too, right? Um, and this process was actually very nostalgic to me. So this is actually handmade paper, and then I laid it on top of ink drawing. But like I mentioned earlier, I was born and raised in a small village in Japan called Obara. And one of the highlights of this small village was a paper making process called eski. And we had a little like paper making museum and that kind of stuff. So I remember when I was attending elementary school in Japan, um, we did this pulp painting process. Um, and what I tried to do was to recreate that process in my basement studio space with what I could get my hands on here. The right ones, the images on the right, are the ones that I created as, with this process as well. And the previous slide here. So this is one of the things where I kept the landscape fairly simple, but I wanted to kind of reflect on like where I am now along with where I come from. So like it's kind of juxtaposing the more traditional approach to the paper making that I did as a kid and kind of placing that over cityscapes, which is kind of the environment that I really live in now. And from here on out, I'm just going to talk about a bunch of other random things that I'd like to do because although oil painting is my favorite medium and the general stuff that I do, I feel like the reality is I just like making stuff. So there's a bunch of other things that I do that I just kind of make and enjoy. Um, so the one on the left is from my Darkness and Light series, which is a series that I did before Human Condition, where I try to create a sense of story using just the relationship between dark and light. One on the right is just one of the paintings that I created for fun. And it actually has carving on the parts there. The leaf pattern is actually like carved into the panel. I will show some examples, but I do also like to do printmaking, where specifically like relief printmaking, like woodcuts. And sometimes when I make woodcuts, I actually like the inked up plate over the actual print that I create. So for those who don't know, like with printmaking, you carve things in the image, you ink it, and you transfer that onto the paper. But oftentimes you end up with a block that has the leftover ink that has the reverse image from what you would have on the print. And since sometimes I like the plate rather than the print, I decided why don't I try, experiment with incorporating that into a painting. So with the one on the painting on the right here, I just sewed the whole panel with black. I carved that into the panel, the leaf pattern into the panel, and then painted in the middle to see how they react with each other. A couple other random things. The one on the left, I do like to play around with the sense of space. So in addition to magical realist artists, I also find surrealist artists to be very enjoyable to look at. And oftentimes they manipulated the sense of space. So one of my favorite, all-time favorite artists is Rene Magritte. And if you've seen his work, he likes to just play around with space. And I like to do the same as well. So in this one, I'm just trying to experiment with three-dimensional, two-dimensional image. How can I make them interact in a unique feeling way? So just kind of playing around with like just trying to really push the boundaries of what is the sense of space that we're trying to look at. On the right is just a landscape painting. Sometimes when I'm like trying to think of ideas, it just, I get burnt out of like trying to come up with like ideas that I'm happy with. And when that time comes, usually landscape is my go-to thing to paint. I just like to practice the skill. I just like to paint it for fun almost. And the right one is just the one I did in between some of my other larger figurative works. These are just examples of that printmaking that I've done in the past. Again, I just like making stuff. Unfortunately, I haven't had as much chance to make printmaking because for those who don't know the process, with a lot of the printmaking process, printing press is very useful. When you don't have a printing press, it gets a lot more labor intensive trying to print because that means you have to like press down on the paper with all your weight and hope that it turns out well. and I just don't have that energy to really print that many things. But these are some of the printmaking that I've done. Both of them are relief woodcut prints. Watercolor. Although one of the things that I realized is that when I work with watercolor, it's always landscape for some reason. When I'm working with acrylic or like oil, I do whatever I enjoy doing. But somehow when it comes to watercolor, it just always ends up being landscapes. Not quite sure why. These are acrylic paintings that I've done. Again, these are actually done during the quarantine when I didn't have access to my oil painting supplies. So I have a love-hate relationship with acrylic where sometimes I'm like, oh, this is okay. Sometimes I go and like this just doesn't it's just not working. But generally, I'm starting to get to a point where I'm okay with the acrylic as well. For those who haven't now really worked with both, acrylic painting does dry a lot faster. So if you're used to oil, I do feel like it does kind of play tricks on me and like how fast it dries. So I just need to kind of get used to it. But you can kind of see, like with acrylic, when I paint, it's very similar to what I do with oil, playing around the sense of space or something that creates a sense of narrative. That's the kind of stuff that I usually like to do. I do also like to work a little bit with like comic book styles, specifically like manga, which is Japanese comic books. I grew up reading a lot of them because some of them started when I was 10, 11, and it's still ongoing. And I feel like I've already invested so much time into it, and I can't stop reading now after investing so much time, But a couple of years ago, one of my students at Kendall College actually came to me asking to start a club to study like manga. So I am the faculty advisor, and I've been watching them create their own from scratch, and that kind of inspired me. So I just started to learn and experiment and learn the process as well, just because watching them make it looked so fun. So these are actually pages from the stuff that I created in the past couple of years. And when I work with this, I do work digitally, so I'm using my tablet on my computer to create these things. So even though I consider myself more of a traditional artist, I do also like use digital stuff to sometimes work out compositional, like composition, color, as well as making some of these comic-based stuff because typing things, speech bubbles, and stuff are actually a lot easier to work in digitally. And this is going back a little bit further back in time. A lot of these paintings are from like between 6, 7 years, 5, 6 years ago, maybe. This is Searching for the Middle Path series, which was actually a lot more personal to me. And you can probably see the similar aspect of what kind of led to my human condition, where this series actually reflected on my own personal background and personal experiences of living in Japan, Samoa, which is the Pacific Island country, and the United States, and reflecting on my own cultural identity, where do I fit in, and that kind of things. So it was a lot more personal in like what the story, like what the idea was. But in the end, it just comes down to the idea of like how do we as human beings react to our environment. And I do feel like the human condition is a similar approach. It's just that it's working on a more broader scale of that experience rather than focusing on my own personal experience. I'm trying to make it a little more vague and ambiguous, but can be applied to the same idea of how do we feel about these different things? How do we react to them? And I feel like that's kind of like the process I took, where I started with more of this personal stuff that dealt with cultural identity, things like that, to human condition, which just dealt with what does it mean to be human, which I think is a very similar idea, except it's just on a broader scale. And I think that's all I have on my end, and hopefully I'm doing okay with time.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. So great to see your work. Now I'm pleased to introduce Lynette Robinson.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm going to share my screen a second. There we go. And then can everyone see that right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so my name is Lynette Robinson. I'm an illustrator, artist, and art educator from Michigan, obviously, right? A little bit about me. I have taught elementary art for 5 years in urban and rural settings. My primary medium that I use is chalk that is inspired from art, literature, and culture. I draw from personal experiences to reveal the thoughts, feelings, and emotions found within art. I did graduate from Kendall College of Art and Design with a BFA, and then I am currently pursuing my MAE from Kendall College of Art and Design. The series that is currently, or the piece that is currently at the Kalamazoo Art Institute was inspired by this book, The Creative Self. There was a quote that really stuck out to me when I was reading, and then I'll just read it for you really quickly. It said, "A positive self-concept is of particular significance to creative achievement in women, female artists, and scholars who have achieved professional success, score much higher on self-confidence than other women." That really stood out to me because self-concept embodies that question of who I am. This question caused me to wonder what other beliefs, mindsets, and identities can have a positive impact on my own life as well as the lives of my students. And then this is a piece that's currently in the exhibition. And then the self-concept of a teacher was selected for the West Michigan Area Art Show. This self-concept of a teacher visually showcases teachers as detectives looking for secrets, hidden clues, and facts within the educational field. The author agrees that a teacher's acknowledgement of a person's abilities and identity is of great importance. It helps spark, stick to, and develop interests. And then this is a part of a series. It is a 3-part series. And so I also included, these are all different identities or labels that I identify with. And so I have the teacher, then I have the artist, which was, I kind of viewed them as almost a gesture that's playing a professional role and is an entertainer for the public. And then the self-concept of the woman, which is on the furthest right, describes women as warriors in defense against stereotypes, supporting the home front, and redefining our definitions of strength. This series really helped address the labels that affected my own values and my own personality and identity as an individual. And then as an artistic process, when I start a new work, I research every aspect of the subject to determine what image needs to be communicated to the viewer. Once a thumbnail is created, which you can see in the left corner there, a final sketch is derived from it. I resolve the forms, I add thick lines, and I add value as well. After those preliminary sketches are complete, the drawings are scanned and printed onto drawing paper. In this step, I cut out the printed image and I create a desired layout before going back and actually cutting the drawing that I've created. And then after that, I'll incorporate found objects such as string or pins or frames into the work as well. And then I professionally scan the image to capture every detail. And then you feel free to reach out to me. I have a LinkedIn account if you'd like to join there. And then I also have it's more of a blog rather than a website. I do plan to create an artist website. I just have a blog right now. So if you are also an educator, I have a lot of lessons for elementary level. I have over, I think, 300 lessons. They're all free. Take whatever you need. And that's about it. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present my work, and thank you for allowing me to have my work in the West Michigan Area Show. Thank you again.
Great. Thank you so much, Lynette. And actually, since Lynette, since you brought it up, to our artists that are with us today, absolutely please feel free to drop in any of your social media handles, any of your websites, anything like that, so that our guests today can continue to follow you. All right, and our final speaker for today is Cindy Krill, and I will be sharing that screen, but I will be, there we go, going on mute now. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, how are you guys? Here we can have my first slide. I am an artist from Kalamazoo, Michigan, and my work is inspired by the beauty of God's creation and my cultural heritage. I graduated from Nazareth College in 1976 with a certification in art education, K through 12, and history, 9 through 12. And I've taken many classes at a lot of other colleges, KVCC, KIA, and I did go to Kendall College too, back before it was an accredited college as an illustration major. But shortly thereafter, I decided to just focus on ceramics. This is a sample of my horsehair pottery, which I really enjoy making because it is a Native American technique. And it's a way to celebrate my heritage and honor my family, even though it didn't originate with my tribe. I am a member of the Sault Ste. Marie Chippewa Native American tribe. The legend has it with the horsehair that a Pueblo woman accidentally created the technique one day when she was firing pots, and she took a hot pot out of the kiln and her hair blew against it and it created designs on it. Then intrigued, she started experimenting with other materials and found that the horsehair and feathers worked the best. When the horsehair contacts the hot pot, it burns and leaves a carbon trail. And then you brush it off and then you coat it with acrylic polish. Next. This is another award that I won at the West Michigan area show. So it was the first one. I have, over the years, created many pots and I've entered them in the area shows. And this pot is titled Ode to Crazy Horse. Next. This piece is in the show this year, and it's different because I started sculpting flowers on the lids of my pieces, and they're about 12 to 18 inches tall. And this is a variety of dogwoods, and it's called Cherokee Princess, which is what I called this piece. Next. This is a piece that was in the West Michigan area show another year, and it's called Treasure Keepers. Next. This is another experiment that I did. It's a huge slab piece, and it was quite challenging because it was so big and to get it in and out of the kiln, because take them out of the kiln when the temperature reaches about 1,000 degrees. Use metal tongs and lift them out and put it on a fireproof surface and then apply the horsehair and the feathers. But I did it, so next. This is just an example of I experiment with lots of different shapes and creating horsehair pots, and because it can be, the whole process can be either really relaxing because when you're making the pot, you burnish it with a stone. When you first throw it or make it, you wait until the pot is leather hard, and then you just sit and burnish it with a stone until it's perfectly smooth. Then I fire them once, and then I fire them again with maybe one or two at a time and take them out of the kiln and apply the feathers or the hair. And that's the exciting part of it, which is fun. Next. This is an example of the centerpiece is through raku pots that I've done and a ceramic or a cement piece that I did at a class taken at the KIA just for fun. And the two side pictures are pictures of the barn that I work in, my studio, and I have a retail space. And the barn was made in 1915. Next. I also make stoneware pottery, and I influenced by a lot of different styles. It's just like there's so many different areas to go into in ceramics. And this is an example of Mahalica that I saw in Italy. I love Mahalica, and I think it really influences a lot of my stonework because even within the Mahalica, there are so many different styles. Next. And I just use stoneware for everything. So this is just an example of using flowers for inspiration. I use antique or vintage linens for inspiration. Next. This is just another example of pieces that I do with slabs. I like to combine slabs and thrown pieces together. And I use live plants for texture and other found objects. Next is just another example. One is on the left is a slab piece with combined a little bit of drawing in it, which is wall hanging. And the bird bath is an example of combining thrown pieces with the top is a slab piece. And I use a lot of grape leaves. Next, this is just an example of stoneware pictures that I make with combining thrown pieces together. It's the pedestal is a separate piece, and then the top of the pot, the picture is another piece. Next, just another example of a lot of different varieties and shapes that I make. And I think that I really enjoy the old Mahalica where they did a lot of realistic fruit and things like that in the stoneware. Next. This is an example of a piece that I did where I made the original and then I cast a mold of it with plaster. And then that enables me to make several copies so I can sell them without doing all that original work over again. And that was inspired by old architecture. So, next. This is just a sample, a picture in my studio where I was making 250 cups for a commission piece. Next. This is the cups finished. I made them for the Nottawasepi Potawatomi Huron Band. They are a tribe that's in Fulton. The reservation is in Fulton. And I decorated them with wild rice. And we had to have special permission to use the wild rice. And I got them all finished and they used them as gifts for their employees. Next, this is a picture of the nursery that my husband and I own, and it was started in 1912, and this building was built in 1915. And it's where I have my studio and where I have my retail space. And it's just a beautiful place because it's, I'm surrounded by nature. We grow trees and shrubs and perennials, and when I need something or resource, I can just go outside and pick it or take pictures of it. Next. This is just a postcard of, I've been having an annual art sale at the nursery for quite a few years. And I like to invite local artists and so that they have some place to sell their wares to. And we just have a collaborative show. And that's once a year. And oops, you can go ahead. This is a photograph of some of the flowers that we grow. I have started making cards, photo cards, and which I sell at the nursery. I have so many, so many resources here. It's just wonderful. Next. This is just a picture of some of my watercolors. I like to use my photos for referencing when I do a painting. I do a lot of more realistic painting with the watercolors. Next. This is just an example of how I use a reference photo to do my watercolors. Next. This is another one that I did. This is the first painting that was accepted in the West Michigan area show, which I'm so excited about. I love to do watercolors or photos that have sharp contrast between the lights and the dark, catch the sun and the shadows. Next. This is another one I did. This is my mom. And I love the sunlight. And sometimes I love just parts, more just the little parts where you can, focus in on and really see the shadows and the subtleties of catching the light and the shadows. Next. This is, I do portraits by commission. And this is one that I did, just a sample. I take the photograph of the child and then I do the painting from it, because you can't get a kid to sit still very long. So next. Then, and this is inspired by going to powwows. I never went to a powwow until I was till like 1995, because my family we knew nothing about our heritage. And so my mother grew up north, and if they didn't know you were Native American, you didn't tell anybody. So she never really learned much about her heritage at all. And so it was just really exciting to finally get to have experience and go to a powwow. So I started taking pictures and I started painting from the powwow. Next. I thought that I would use my photographs and a watercolor apps to help me loosen up with my paintings. But when I started using the apps, I found that I really liked the effect of the apps, and I just like that realism. So I know if I tried to paint this, I just would make myself nuts and I wouldn't loosen up anyway, but I like the way the image turned out. So I have a series of powwow dancers. Next. This is just another one in the series. Next. And this is another. And next. And this is the one that I entered in the show, since I digitally altered my photograph. And I think that's about all I have.
Great, Cindy, thank you so much. And actually, Cindy, we have a question for you from the chat. Where is the nursery/studio?
It is in Vicksburg. It's south of Kalamazoo.
Great. Now, everyone, this is the portion where we open up for questions. You can either choose to type your question into the chat box and I will read them out loud, or you can unmute yourself to ask your question. And Cindy, since you're unmuted already, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you have horses, or where do you source your horse hair from?
No, I do not have horses, but I have friends that have horses. And actually customers will come in and bring me horsehair too. I do special memorial pieces for people, because I think that's one of the things that Native Americans would do to commemorate the birth of a special horse or the life of a special horse. They would use the horsehair to make a pot, to decorate the pot. So I have a lot of friends that have horses.
Great, thank you. Just a quick note from me, my lights are flashing. I think it's storming outside. So if I lose power the meeting shouldn't end because two of our artists are co-hosts, but I might be gone.
Okay.
We have a question from Lida. Why was it necessary to get permission to use the wild rice?
Because it's a sacred plant. And I had to get permission from the elders to use it because I would be not using it for food.
Thank you.
And it's a protected plant.
And it's a protected plant. Great. Yes, so thank you very much for that question, Lida. If anyone else has a question, please feel free to unmute yourselves. Yeah, I'll just share some thoughts that I had while people come up with their questions if they have any, which was first, Taz, your ability to paint wrinkles is amazing on clothing. I also oil paint and I was just amazed by your skill.
Thank you. Although I think, as artists, I think we should all know that what we always see is always our best work. And there's always a bunch that never sees the light of day, So I appreciate your feedback, but I have to admit, there are a lot of clothes I painted that got painted over a bunch of times.
Awesome. And one thing I really enjoyed both from Taz and Lynette is that you shared the artist process. I think that's always an amazing thing for people to get to see. And Lynette, I liked that you talked about creating your product and then actually photocopying it or taking a photo of it before you then committed to the next stage. Does that allow you to really play around with your composition?
Yeah, I would say so. It's also a little bit less nerve-wracking if you're cutting up like a printed photograph than committing to cutting your pre-drawn art piece.
A question for all three of you is kind of what's your vision or your hopes for your future artistic practice and endeavors? I know it's a big question, but.
I guess I can start answering that question. I think ideally, yes, like selling and making money from just artwork would be nice, but I feel like for me, I'd rather create what I want to create as opposed to what people will buy, which I think sometimes there is a difference in those two things. And for me, at this point, what I would like for my work to do is to actually, like Cindy was talking about, where I do tend to work a lot more in a refined and controlled manner. And I've been really trying to push myself to be looser in one way or another, which I think just personality wise, I'm having a hard time achieving that. So I'm hoping that at some point in the future, I can start to get a new style, like stylistic, change where I can include the more refined aspect and the looser approaches in a unified composition. That's kind of what I want to do. It's just, I think I need to get over the more mental and psychological aspect of things to be able to achieve that.
Lynette and Cindy, do either of you want to have any thoughts or want to answer that question?
I think that's one of my main goals is I really just want to loosen up, but I don't know if it's in my genes to do that. It's like, I guess maybe that's one reason why too I really like photography, because I just really see an image that I like so much, and then it's like, well, I enjoy other people's work that is really loose, and it's like, oh, it just seems so creative, and maybe I'm just not being creative, being so tight, just trying to reproduce it. So that's where I want to go.
I have a few dreams and a few goals. Like one is I'm trying to complete my master's in art education. That is one of my dreams and one of my goals that I have. Another goal that I gave myself is I was blessed and lucky to talk with some other local artists around the area, and we talked about like entering art pieces into competitions. And so one of the goals that I have for myself is to tried to make it into at least 5 competitions. Why still pursuing my master's in art education? It is difficult, and I'm sure any teacher could announce to this, it is difficult to balance being a professional artist while also teaching full time. But that is one of my own personal goals, is eventually I would like to make it into at least 5 galleries before I graduate. So I know it's a little bit hefty of a goal, but I'm hoping to accomplish it.
It's a great goal. And just off the top of my head, I know that the Holland Arts Council, at least a couple weeks ago, had their regional competition open. So I'm not sure when the deadline for that is, but yeah, I feel like we could form a club, because I also try to be a practicing artist, and one of my goals is to loosen up as well. So, okay, it's almost 12:50, and there's nothing wrong with ending early if we need to. I do want to invite the audience to ask a question if they would like to. And also, if the artists with us today have got any last thoughts they'd like to share, or any questions you would like to ask of one another. This is just our casual time.
I love both the art pieces that you both created. They were really quite incredible. It makes me kind of be like, all right, I gotta step it up a notch. I need to be making more work. I love what both of you had done. It looked so nice.
So this is just a question to Lynette, just about the, like, I mean, even though I teach at a college level, so it's very different. I'm sure it's very different from teaching younger kids. Like, this is just my personal, like, like curiosity, but like with teaching younger kids, like how do you balance the idea of like creative approach versus having a structure that the students younger age can follow? Because I think that's one of the things that I see is sometimes I do see people who have kids art project which becomes more craft based, where they follow a step-by-step process, which I think hinders from the creative input of the students and the expressive qualities of the students. So like from your professional standpoint, like what do you think is a, like, what do you have anything that you think about or process do you have in mind to like make sure that kids get that, understand different processes, but also have the chance to really express and have their own creative input?
Yeah, I think there's a big balance between all that. I do teach kindergarten through 5th grade, so I hope that the mindset of someone at a college level is a little bit different than someone that's 5. At least I hope so. I do tend to give them a lot of accommodations. So we'll use templates, or we have graphite sheets or calligraphy sheets that students can use as a reference if they need to. I also have, we call visionary boards or visual boards. So that's like a collection of a lot of artists. So students can walk over and look at the artist and come up with an idea that way. We do a lot of thumbnail sketches beforehand. So they do a lot of drawing before that. We'll do a lot of gallery walks. So they'll walk around and they'll talk about their work. I do have a lot of my students work online. I am part of Art Sonia, which is like an online art gallery. So we do upload every art piece that my students create, which is, it's a fine balance between allowing them to creatively express themselves, but also having the quality as well. I think that's something that a lot of teachers struggle with, is finding, like you said, that balance between the two. There is a model that I would highly recommend. I think it's like the creative process model. What that does is you have like your standards that you have to follow, and it has like the objectives that you're trying your students to make, like their creative ideas, but then it also breaks it down into how you work through your process so you keep that quality up. I would recommend that if for any age level. I hopefully that answered the question. I kind of realized that I kind of jumped in a circle, but yeah, they do have a lot of opportunities. We do have a lot of free art, so they can draw, create whatever they'd like during that time too. But I also pull in a lot of contemporary artists, so they're getting exposure to other artists, and then they can create from that.
Thank you. That was very informative.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that we have a question from the audience to all. Has the pandemic changed or impacted the direction of your artwork?
For me, I think during the pandemic, especially, like I did have a chance to like not like kind of branch out to different processes and stuff because one, I was, helping out a family member. I just didn't have access to my old painting studio. So I was forced to make something else. And generally, I feel like unless the world was turned upside down, I have this like tendency to, well, I want to keep making the work from the same series so that I can submit it for a solo exhibition, things like that, like that forces me to keep making similar bodies so that I can actually exhibit them as a whole. But because at this point, I just decided 2020 was kind of a big outlier, I did kind of like branch out a little bit more in that way. I do feel like stylistically, I don't think it affected me as much. I think it was more so about the like using that time in a different way.
Thank you. Cindy or Lynette?
I feel like we need to do rock, paper, scissors every single time because I don't know if I'm gonna like talk over Sydney or not. So I'm like, okay, do I go? Do I not go? Yeah, the pandemic definitely affected my teaching style as well as my work. There was a lot of like material that I would like to purchase, or a lot of objects I was trying to get where stores were closed down or you couldn't get them because they weren't producing them. So I did start doing digital work. Oops, sorry, give me a second. Hopefully you can see that. But I did start doing digital work. I've never done that before. So it was nice to kind of have that as an alternative to pen and paper.
Thank you.
I don't think it changed. I had access to everything I needed to create, and except for I was a lot busier with my job with at the nursery because everybody was out gardening and wanting to buy stuff. So that does take away from my time from working in the studio, but which was great though they help people, decide how to plan their yard and to choose plants. And it was just fun seeing all the young families come in. And then I think I spent a little more time making some sculptural pieces more than just making, functional things.
Great, thank you so much. We have a comment from the chat. Thank you so much to all the artists for sharing their work and processes. It's so interesting and very much appreciated. And I'm going to echo that. Thank you very much. It was really exciting to get to see a range of your work and to see perhaps the process behind things. And I know that I certainly got visually cued in on some things that I maybe didn't necessarily notice in the galleries because I got to see the behind the scenes process for some of your works. So we're about ready to end, and thank you so much to Taz, Lynette, and Cindy for joining us and for giving us their time today and sharing their knowledge and their expertise with us. Thank you so much to our audience for joining us today. And I always ask if our speakers want to share one last thought or one last comment before we say goodbye.
Thank you everyone for showing up. I didn't put my website, but at the same time, if you want to find more of my work, you just type in my name. It's unique enough that mine's the first thing that pops up. So you can always just type in Tatsuki Hakoyama. The first thing you pop up would most likely be my website. So.
I just want to say thank you for giving the opportunity to do this. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you to everyone that took time out of their day to be here. And thank you for all the really great questions. They were really great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so very much again for your time, for your expertise, for sharing your skills with us. And if you have not had a chance to come into the KIA, you can come in and you can see these three amazing artists work in person until September 12th. And you can vote in the People's Choice Award in the galleries. And again, if you come in November or July, if you come in July, you can get 97-cent entry if you book your ticket online using the KIA's new website to celebrate our 97th birthday, unless of course you're a member, and then of course your entry is free. So everyone have a really great rest of your day. I think it might be very stormy outside, so stay dry. And I hope to see you in 2 weeks for our next art break with Amber Utsma from the Meyer Gardens. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.